Snow began to fall as they turned onto the narrow road leading up the hill. The old wooden sign by the roadside barely showed the faded words, Lake Hollow, private cabin. The three of them sat silently in the car, listening to the tires crunching on the hard snow, with only the dim yellow headlights cutting through the darkness. Christian was driving, eyes fixed on the winding road ahead. Emma sat in the passenger seat, hands clasped together, staring at the GPS screen that had lost signal nearly half an hour ago. In the back seat, Leo yawned and said half-jokingly, "If this were the start of a horror movie, I bet the driver dies first." Christian chuckled, but the laugh quickly faded into silence. Outside, the forest was pitch black, dense enough to swallow the light. They all knew they were far from any town or settlement, and that was exactly what they wanted. They had planned this trip for weeks. A quiet New Year's getaway, no fireworks, no noise, no strangers. A small cabin by the lake, a few bottles of wine, some snacks, board games, and a list of horror movies. Escaping the world, Emma had called it. When they arrived, the clock read 6 in the evening. The last light of day was fading, painting the sky in a cold blue-gray. The cabin stood in the woods, small, secluded, and seemingly long abandoned. Snow covered the roof, nearly burying the wooden steps. A crooked chimney leaned to one side, and the front door, dark and weathered, looked worn by frost. "See? Not so bad," Christian said as he turned off the engine, his breath forming white mist in the air. Leo opened the door, stepping out into the creaking snow. He looked around, nothing but trees, no other lights but the cabins. No cars, no city sounds, only the whisper of wind through branches. An eerie stillness hung in the air, almost too quiet. Emma murmured, "Maybe it's quiet enough to be scary." Together they carried their bags inside. The cabin door creaked open, releasing a musty mix of old wood and cold smoke. Inside was simple, a small living room with a stone fireplace, dusty armchairs, and a few black and white photos hanging crookedly on the walls. It looked like no one had been there for a long time. Christian switched on the light. The weak yellow bulb flickered, making the room seem even older. Leo walked over to a picture near the window and glanced at it. A middle-aged man wearing a cap, stern-faced. No name, no date. "Probably the owner," Leo muttered. "Don't look too close, you're creeping me out," Emma said, half joking. They tidied up, lit a fire in the hearth, and the smell of burning wood filled the room. Soon, they sat around the table, opened wine, and played soft music. No internet, no signal, no emails, no notifications. Just them and the silence of the snowy woods. Outside, night had fallen. Snow was thick and the wind howled, making the cabin tremble slightly. But in the flickering firelight, everything felt cozy. Christian smiled, raising his glass. "To a drama-free New Year." "To a peaceful night," Emma replied, clinking glasses. "And to surviving the weekend," Leo laughed. They all laughed together, light and genuine. That night, as the clock neared 9, the snow hadn't stopped. They turned on a movie, wrapped in blankets on the sofa, while the wind whistled through the cracks. The cabin became its own little world, warm, enclosed, safe. At least, that's how it felt before they heard the first knock. A sharp, hollow thud echoed from the front door. Christian looked up. Leo thought it was the wind. But then it came again, slower, clearer. 3 knocks, louder than before. Emma glanced toward the window, only darkness and white snow. No lights, no one there. The wind still blew, the cabin lights still glowed. But in that moment, all 3 of them felt it. Something had just changed. All 3 of them looked at each other, then back at the wooden door. The knocking stopped. Only the sound of the wind howling through the roof and the crackle of firewood in the fireplace remained. "Maybe it's just the wind shaking the door," Christian said, trying to sound calm. But Emma stood still, eyes fixed on the fogged window pane. Outside, there was only thick white snow and blowing wind. No sign of any person or animal. Leo shrugged. Whoever it is would have to be insane to wander out here in this weather. They decided to ignore it. Christian locked the door carefully and returned to the sofa. They resumed the movie, the background music pushing away the strange unease from before. A while later, they were laughing again, as if nothing had happened. The small cabin glowed with warm yellow light that cast long, distorted shadows on the walls. Emma glanced at the clock, only 9:30. Still early. They planned to stay up until midnight to welcome the new year. Christian grabbed more wine. Leo took out his phone to snap a few souvenir pictures, then laughed when he realized no signal. Can't send them anyway. Even better, Emma said. No one to bother us. They played cards, joked, and talked about the new year, work, and old college memories. Outside, the wind grew stronger, whistling around the cabin like 100 overlapping voices. Near 11 o'clock, the fire in the hearth began to fade. Christian stood up, threw on his coat, and went out back to get more wood. He opened the rear door and immediately shivered. The air outside was bitterly cold, and the wind carried with it a faint sound, like footsteps somewhere far off in the snow. He froze, holding his breath to listen. Nothing, just the sound of snow falling and the forest rustling. He shook his head, laughing at himself. "You're imagining things," he thought, and bent down to pick up a few logs. As he turned to go back inside, he caught something through the small side window, a dark shape standing amid the white snow. Christian startled, staring hard, but whatever it was gone, as if it had never been there. He shut the door, checked the lock, and hurried back to the living room. "Did anyone walk around out there?" he asked. Leo looked up. "Who? I thought I saw someone in the yard. Probably your own shadow." Emma stayed silent, frowning slightly. She glanced toward the window. Everything was still. The three of them sat down again, pretending to be calm. Christian added more wood to the fire, the flickering light revealing the floating dust in the air. The scent of burning wood mixed with the chill, creating a strange, earthy smell. Time moved slowly. The clock's hands crept toward 11:45. "Almost midnight," Leo said, pouring more wine. "New Year's Eve, in the middle of the snowy woods? Bet no one else is celebrating like us." "As long as no one crashes the party," Emma replied, half joking. Christian smiled faintly, but the unease in his chest didn't fade. He glanced toward the window again, the same spot where he had seen the dark figure moments ago. The snow kept falling, but something was different. On the snow outside, where the cabin's light reached, he noticed a new line of footprints, not theirs. Large, deep prints circling the cabin, ending right at the steps. Christian's heartbeat quickened. He signaled to the others. Leo frowned, stepped closer to look. There really is someone out there. They stood by the door, holding their breath. In the wind, there was a faint sound, like breathing carried away by the cold. Emma stepped back and whispered, "Maybe it's someone lost? We should help." "No signal," Leo said. "And who gets lost and walks around a cabin in the middle of the night?" The question hung heavy in the room. No one spoke. They decided to turn off most of the lights, leaving only the glow of the fireplace. All three sat in silence, listening. Outside, the snow kept falling, but now, beneath the wind, they heard a new sound. Footsteps on the wooden porch. Slow, measured, clear. 1, 2, 3 steps. Then silence. Christian swallowed hard, whispering, "Someone's out there." And then, the knocking came again, this time slower, heavier. As if whoever was outside knew they were standing there, listening. This time, the knocking came in 3 distinct beats. Thud, 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 each one echoing through the wooden frame, making the door shudder. Emma flinched and gripped Christian's sleeve tightly. Leo looked toward the window, but the thick curtain only reflected the flickering yellow light from inside. Christian swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and stepped slowly toward the door. The wind outside was howling louder now, carrying with it the sound of something hitting the cabin wall, maybe a branch, or maybe not. He stopped a few steps from the door. "Who's there?" he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. There was no reply, only the wind and the heavy, muffled sound of falling snow. He looked at Leo, signaling for silence. All three stood still. 1 second, 2 seconds, then the knocking came again, harder this time. Bam! 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 Emma gasped. "Christian, don't open it." But Christian kept moving. His hand touched the icy doorknob. He undid the safety latch and cracked the door open just enough to look outside. The cabin's yellow light spilled into a small patch of snow. Beyond it was darkness, and a man standing about 2 meters away. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a thick brown coat and a hunter's hat pulled low over his ears. The dim light hid his features, but his eyes were visible, wide, unblinking, staring straight through Christian. Christian spoke carefully. "What do you need?" The man didn't answer right away. He tilted his head slightly, his breath forming a cloud of white mist. Then, in a low, raspy voice, he said slowly, each word clear and deliberate, "I told you to keep quiet." Christian frowned. "We weren't making noise." Don't lie, the man snapped. I heard it, the laughter, the music, the clinking glasses. I said, be silent. He took a step closer. Christian gripped the door tighter, heart pounding. Hey, this is a rental cabin. No one lives around here. Who are you? The man raised his head, his eyes glinting in the dark, reflecting the firelight from inside. I'm a neighbor, and I don't want to hear voices tonight. Emma spoke up from behind, her voice trembling. It's New Year's Eve. We were just watching a movie, not being loud. The man turned his gaze toward her, as if realizing for the first time there were others inside. His stare lingered too long. Then suddenly he smiled. A tight, twisted smile that made his shadowed face look grotesque. Tonight, no one should be laughing. None of them understood what he meant. Then he turned, walking away, disappearing into the snow. The door slammed shut. Christian locked it quickly and turned around, his face still pale. You heard him. He's crazy. Keep quiet? What's that supposed to mean? Emma asked softly. No idea, Leo said. But I swear there's no house nearby. No neighbors at all. They sat in silence for a long moment, the only sound the wind roaring outside. After a while, Christian tried to sound calm. Maybe he's drunk or lost. Either way, let's just lock everything and tell the owner in the morning. Yeah, Leo nodded. Just forget it. They checked every door, every latch, then returned to the fire. No one mentioned it again, but the mood had changed. The fire still burned, yet the warmth had vanished, replaced by a creeping chill that clung to their skin. Emma sat curled up, her eyes drifting to the door every so often. Christian tried to act normal, turning the movie back on, but the sound seemed distant now, muffled, like playing through a sheet of ice. Every gust of wind, every creak of the wood made them jump. Near midnight, Leo whispered, Do you think he'll come back? No one answered. Christian glanced at the curtain. Outside was pitch black. The snow kept falling, the wind relentless. Nothing moved, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still out there, standing just a few meters away. He dimmed the lights, leaving only the glow of the fireplace. The cabin darkened, and the firelight cast warped shapes on the walls, like hundreds of shifting silhouettes. Emma stood, grabbed her phone, and tried to find a signal. Nothing. Not a single bar. Guess he was right, she murmured. There's no one out here at all. None of them laughed anymore. When the clock struck 12, faint fireworks from a distant town echoed through the storm, soft, ghostly sounds from another world. Christian lifted his glass quietly. Happy New Year. No one replied. A second later, from outside came a single gentle knock. Just one. Thud, then silence. Complete silence. All three heard it, but none dared to speak. Emma stared at Christian, eyes wide. Leo swallowed hard. The fireplace popped as a log cracked, making them all flinch. No one played another movie. No one spoke again. That night, they sat in silence as the fire burned low, waiting for morning, or at least for the moment they could finally believe the man was truly gone. After the haunting knock the previous night, the air in the cabin still felt heavy, wrapped in a lingering, icy chill. None of them spoke about the man again, but no one could pretend to be at ease. The next morning, snow continued to fall steadily, covering every footprint around the cabin. Christian opened the door and looked outside, searching for any trace of the stranger. There was nothing, only endless white, biting cold, and the silent forest. No footprints, no vehicles, no signs of life other than their own. Maybe it was just a dream, Leo said, trying to sound light, though his voice trembled. I don't think it was, Emma replied. I saw him, really saw him, those eyes, cold and deep. Christian said nothing. He couldn't explain it either. All three felt it. Something about the space around the cabin had changed. The trees, the snow, even the silence itself seemed to carry an invisible threat. They decided to go outside and clear the snow around the path and steps. Christian bundled up, Leo took a shovel, and Emma followed. The snow was thick, each step sinking deep. There was no sound except the crunch of their boots, the wind around the roof, and at times a faint knocking sound, distant, rhythmic, gone as soon as they noticed it. Someone's out there, Emma whispered, flinching at a creak from the porch. It's just the wind, Christian replied, trying to sound calm, though his heart pounded hard. When they went back inside, everything seemed quiet, but the firelight flickered, casting warped shadows on the walls. Leo stood up, staring at the window. The daylight was fading, the woods turning black, as if swallowing the cabin whole. Do you see something? Emma asked, voice shaking. No, nothing, Leo said, but his eyes kept darting back to the window. As night fell, the unease grew. Every pop of wood, every gust of wind through the cracks made them jump. Christian tried to put on a movie, but the TV's sound was muffled, out of sync with the picture. He switched to music, but it came out distorted, as if someone were whispering too close to the speaker. Emma sat curled up on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees. "I feel like someone's watching us," she whispered. Right then, Leo heard a faint thumping sound at the front door. He leapt up, ran toward it, eyes wide. No one outside, just snow, but Christian saw it, new footprints, not the ones from before, larger, heavier prints circling the cabin, stopping right at the door. "No," Christian muttered. "Those are his footprints." They searched around but found no one. No footsteps moving away, no lights, no trace of movement, only the still footprints in the snow, frozen in place. All three stood silent. No one dared to speak. The wind howled again, mingling with the crack of wood and another sound, metal scraping, uneven and sharp, almost like a signal. They all heard it clearly, their hearts racing. Emma whispered, I can't take this anymore." Christian shook his head, trying to steady his voice. "We're safe inside. It's just some crazy person out there." But even he couldn't deny it. Something wasn't right. The cabin felt smaller now, the darkness outside pressing close, suffocating. They locked every door, pulled every curtain tight. But the weak yellow light from the fireplace only made it worse. The warped shadows on the walls looked like dozens of still figures, watching. Leo couldn't bring himself to stare for long. The wind dragged on, then suddenly stopped. A heavy silence fell, the kind that made it feel like someone was listening to their every heartbeat. Emma whispered, "Maybe he never left." Christian tilted his head, eyes fixed on the window. All three could hear it now, the faint crunch of snow underfoot, the wind, and a soft, deliberate tapping, steady, pulsing, matching the rhythm of their fear. The feeling of being watched consumed them. No one dared to turn on the TV or speak. Every sound made them flinch. They huddled close by the dying fire, hearts pounding, breath shallow. None of them slept that night. Every time they closed their eyes, they saw him, the man standing outside, eyes wide, staring at them through the dark. Around 3 a.m., Christian whispered, "We need to be ready. If he comes back, we have to know what to do." Emma and Leo nodded silently. No one dared to voice their true fear. The small cabin, buried in snow, had become a cold trap with an unseen stranger somewhere near. Outside, the snow kept falling, but the wind, the knocking, and the feeling of being watched never stopped. The first night had passed, but the terror had only begun. The second night passed with a simmering tension, but from 11 o'clock, everything began to escalate. The wind still howled through the forest, but it was no longer the only sound. Christian heard a rustling, like heavy footsteps in the snow, approaching the cabin slowly. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, eyes fixed on the window. Leo looked up, listening. Silence, then a faint thud, thud from the front porch, small but distinct. "He's back." They stood, pulling the curtain aside slightly. The snow covered the steps, but Christian noticed new footprints, circling the cabin, larger and deeper than those from the night before. Each step seemed punctuated by a ragged breath, audible in the still night. Emma stepped back toward the table, hugging herself. I can't take this anymore." "Calm down. We're still inside," Christian said, trying to reassure her, though his own voice trembled. The wind shifted, blending with the rustling from the roof, then suddenly, a metallic clang rang out. Something struck the wooden railing of the porch. "Something! He's right outside!" Leo said, half frightened, half angry. Christian approached the front door, hand shaking, peering through the crack. In the firelight's reflection, he saw a figure standing outside, tall, broad-shouldered, in a dark brown coat, hat pulled low. His eyes gleamed in the weak light, cold, hollow, lifeless. The man said nothing, only stood there. Then he suddenly brought his hand down, striking the door hard. The wood reverberated through the room, making them jump. Once more, Christian tried to open the door, but hesitated. "Run!" Emma shouted, stepping back. "No, not yet," Christian replied, eyes locked on the figure. The man stood for a few seconds, then drew a metal rod from his coat. He struck the glass of a car parked beside the cabin, creating sharp, cracking sounds. The firelight reflected off the cracks, scattering into glimmering shards like blood in the night. "We have to lock everything," Leo yelled, running around the cabin to secure every side window. The man didn't leave. Instead, he hit the car glass again, then bent down, prying at the hood with the rod. The metallic clangs were rhythmic, hard, like the heartbeat of a predator. Christian pulled Emma and Leo into the living room, locking the front door. They held their breath, their eyes glued to the shadow outside. The cabin air felt thick, their hearts pounding audibly. Outside, the snow kept falling, but now every gust of wind, every rustle, every metallic strike was a warning. The man stood for a while, then suddenly slammed the rod against the door, making the window shake, a crack forming. The shattering sound echoed inside, slicing through the silence like a knife. Emma screamed, clutching Christian. "He's gonna break the door," Christian nodded, trying to stay calm, eyes fixed on the shadow outside. The man paused for a few seconds, lifting the rod, aiming at the glass, as if testing its strength. "We have to be ready for anything," he whispered, tense. The wind outside intensified, mingling with the rod striking the car glass, creating a terrifying rhythm. Clang, clang, clang. They heard a quiet laugh from Leo, but it was shaky, filled with fear. Emma could only hug Christian's legs, eyes wide. The man turned, eyes blazing in the dark, then struck the cabin window with the rod. The cracked glass fell in shards, scattering across the floor. He's trying to break in," Christian said, almost shouting. The wind roared, branches snapped against the porch, the sound of breaking glass, metal striking, and their pounding hearts merged into a horrifying symphony, almost unbearable. Emma whispered, "I'm scared. I want to go home." But they knew the cabin, in the snowy forest on this New Year's Eve, was no longer home. The man lingered, then lifted the rod, pausing as if considering his next move. His shadow in the firelight appeared distorted, enormous, powerful. Christian whispered, "Prepare yourselves, he won't stop." Leo nodded, hands shaking, eyes still on the dark figure. Emma covered her head, eyes closed, silently praying. In a brief, tense silence, they heard the final clang of metal, then nothing. The man was gone, but they knew the silence was temporary. Darkness still pressed around the cabin. The wind, the trees, the falling snow, the shattered glass haunted them. And in their hearts, a nameless fear that man would return, and next time, it would not just be destruction. The wind still howled through the forest, but now it was no longer the greatest threat. Around 1 a.m., the familiar sound of footsteps echoed, slow, heavy, steady. The man had returned. Christian stood close to the door, hand gripping the knob. Leo and Emma hid behind the sofa, silent. The cabin felt suffocating, their hearts pounding, each beat echoing like drums in the night. Suddenly, a loud boom came from the window. The metal rod had slammed against the glass of the car parked near the cabin. Shards of glass scattered across the snow. Christian stepped back, eyes wide. The man was holding a gun, aiming at the cabin. "Run!" Leo shouted, but the space was tight, the only exit the front door. The man slammed the door hard, the wood groaning through the cabin. Then a series of gunshots rang out, hitting the wooden walls, splintering wood flying everywhere, deep dents forming in the wall. Smoke from the fireplace mixed with the wood dust from the shots, creating a hazy, choking atmosphere inside. Emma screamed, clutching Christian. Leo lunged toward the kitchen, grabbing anything to shield themselves. The gunfire echoed in rhythm with their pounding hearts, each shot feeling like it was striking their very spirit. Christian pulled them into a small side room, a window hidden behind curtains, and locked the door from the inside. They hid, breathing heavily, hearts nearly leaping from their chests. "Will we survive?" Emma whispered, eyes red. "We will, as long as he doesn't break in," Christian replied, voice tense. Outside, footsteps, gunfire, and shattering glass continued. The man struck the window with the rod, then fired a few more shots into the cabin. Shards of glass scattered, the sounds horrifying, echoing like a macabre rhythm through the snowy forest. Leo grabbed a wooden chair as a makeshift shield, pressing it against the door. Each shot made them flinch, cold sweat soaking their backs. After a while, the gunfire stopped. Only the howling wind and heavy silence remained. "He's gone?" Emma whispered. "Not sure," Christian replied, eyes fixed on the crack of the door. "But he's definitely still around." They heard footsteps receding into the thick snow, but could not be certain if he had left or was merely pausing. About 15 minutes later, the police arrived. Sirens wailed in the distance, lights flashing through the windows. The man had vanished into the night, leaving only footprints in the snow and spent shells on the floor. Christian opened the door and stepped outside, scanning the area. There was no one, only broken glass, footprints in the snow, and an oppressive silence. Emma stepped out trembling, Leo behind her, eyes wide as he scanned the forest. The police questioned them, documented the scene, but none of them could clearly describe the man's face or identity. "He's not a neighbor," one officer said. "No one knows who he is." All three were silent. No words could dispel the horror they had experienced. The cabin, the snowy forest, New Year's Eve, all had become an indelible, haunting memory. Christian looked toward the deep darkness beyond the cabin, where the man had disappeared. He knew one thing: this was no ordinary person, and that night would never be forgotten. They returned to the cabin, locked every door and bolt. All night, they said nothing, only sat looking at each other, breathing hard, trying to steady themselves. The wind still howled outside, but it was no longer the greatest fear. The real terror was not knowing when he would return or what would happen next time. After the gunfire and shattered glass, the cabin looked like a battlefield. Smoke and dust mixed with the cold, thickening the air, every breath echoing through the room. Christian stood still, hand gripping the door, eyes fixed on the crack. Leo and Emma huddled beside him, trembling, cold sweat running down their foreheads. "We can't just hide here forever," Christian whispered. "We have to get outside, find a safe place, or at least reach the main road." Emma closed her eyes, trying to swallow her fear. "But he's still out there." Christian nodded, eyes never leaving the window. "I know, but if we don't move, we'll be trapped here. We have to get to the car." They stealthily moved to the living room, drew the curtains, and looked outside. Footprints remained in the snow, deep and distinct, leading from the cabin porch into the trees behind. No figure was visible, but the feeling of being watched pressed down, making every step tremble. "Leo, Emma, follow me, slow, one step at a time," Christian signaled. They crept toward the car, bent low, hands still clasped together. Every crunch of snow beneath their feet seemed amplified dozens of times. Their hearts pounded, breaths shallow. Suddenly, from the darkness, a thumping sound rang out. The man appeared, glimpsed through the falling snow, holding a gun and metal rod. The cabin light reflected off him, casting a huge, distorted, menacing shadow. Christian lowered his voice. "Run!" They bolted for the car, but the man raised his gun, firing a few shots into the side of the cabin. Wood splintered, fragments flying. A bullet grazed Christian's shoulder, nearly knocking him down. Emma screamed, pulling him toward the car. Leo opened the door, just in time to jump into the back seat. Christian tossed his bag in and started the ignition. The road was slippery, his hands shaking as he turned the key. The man didn't move immediately, standing for a moment, then lunged toward them, striking the car window with the rod, producing a chilling crack. "Hurry!" Christian shouted, stomping the gas. The car jolted as the tires slipped on the snow. He struck the rod against the window a few more times, but couldn't keep up with the moving vehicle. Wind, tires on snow, and snapping branches in the forest merged into a chaotic symphony of terror. Christian carefully navigated the narrow road, eyes straining for the main road. Leo tried calling the police, the signal weak, but the distant siren sounded like their only hope. The man vanished into the darkness, leaving only footprints stopping near the roadside, as if waiting for them to return. Emma clung to Christian, voice trembling. I can't believe we made it." Christian nodded, eyes alert, hands frozen on the wheel. "We're not safe yet. He could come back anytime." Minutes later, police arrived, blue and red lights flashing through the falling snow. They blew their sirens, signaling Christian to stop. Officers approached, questioning them and recording the scene. "What happened?" one asked. Christian gasped. "A stranger with a rod and a gun attacked the cabin, shot at us. We were lucky to escape." The police searched the area but found no trace of him. Spent shells, broken glass, and footprints in the snow were all that remained. "No one knows who he is," another officer said. "There are no houses nearby, no witnesses, and no record of anyone living near the cabin." Christian, Emma, and Leo remained silent, hearts still racing. The terror they had endured lingered as if the man had never left, only hiding in the shadows. The police documented the incident, instructed them into a patrol vehicle, and took them to the nearest station to file a report. They left the cabin, glancing back one last time. The snow still fell, The forest remained silent, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Christian quietly whispered to Emma, "We're lucky, but he's still out there. No one knows who he is." Leo remained silent, eyes fixed on the dark forest, knowing the memory of that terrifying night would haunt them forever. The next morning, the snow continued to fall, covering every trace of the horrifying night. The cabin was now silent, but every shard of glass, every dent in the wall, every footprint in the snow reminded Christian, Emma, and Leo that he had been there and he could return at any moment. The police inspected the scene once more. They measured footprints, documented bullet marks, and photographed every fragment of debris. The results left all three in shock. No one lived near the cabin, and no one knew the identity of the stranger from the previous night. "We couldn't find any identity," one officer said. "He's not a neighbor. No records, no missing person reports, nothing to indicate who he is." Christian remained silent, eyes fixed on the forest. Part of him wanted to believe it was over, but instinct warned him that the man was still out there, watching, waiting for the next moment. Emma squeezed Christian's hand, voice trembling. I can't forget his eyes." Leo stood behind them, gaze empty. He could not forget the gunshots, the shattering glass, the wind howling through every crack. All those sounds still echoed in their minds, a constant reminder of how fragile safety was. The police instructed them to leave the cabin and get into a patrol car to be taken to the nearest town. They complied, but when they looked back one last time, the cabin still stood in the snowy forest, outwardly peaceful, but marked by violence and terror. On the way back, Christian said nothing. Emma whispered, "We'll never go back there, right?" "No," Christian replied, voice hoarse, "never." Leo remained silent, eyes fixed on the forest along the road. Deep inside, an unshakable fear lingered. The man could be watching them from somewhere, invisible, unknown, untraceable. In the following days, they tried to return to normal life, but the memory of New Year's Eve clung to them. The empty gaze, the knocking, the gunfire, the broken glass, and the footprints in the snow. Every sudden sound, every shadow triggered racing hearts and trembling bodies. They called the police, hoping for any clue, but everything was dead end. No report on the attacker, no recognition, no trace beyond what had happened at the cabin. Christian, Emma, and Leo gradually realized a terrifying truth. He was not a normal human. No identity, no reason, no trace. Just a madman, or a horrifying phenomenon, appearing to shatter peace, sow terror, and vanish into the night. They would never know his name, never know where he lived or what his purpose was. The only certainty, he existed, and he could appear again at any time. Emma once asked Christian, "If he comes back, what do we do?" Christian remained silent, knowing no answer was truly safe. The memory of the empty eyes, the rod, and the gun haunted them, a reminder that the world held things beyond understanding, and safety was never guaranteed, even in the seemingly isolated snowy forest. And so, that New Year's Eve, meant as an escape from the world, became an unnameable nightmare. The cabin still stood, snow still fell, the forest remained silent. But the man, the nameless stranger, lingered somewhere in the darkness, leaving a lasting fear for anyone who had ever encountered him. They survived. They left the forest, but the memory of that night never left. And deep down, every time they looked into the dark, one unspoken question remained. Will he come back? And the answer? No one knew. Tonight's story ends here. If you have a real horror story, send it to Dark Whispers Audio. Let's share the fear together. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next whisper might come sooner than you think.